Hello Internet, welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Duel video. Today I'm going to be showcasing my favourite deck yet again, the DDDs. Sorry that I haven't posted in a while. The reason I haven't posted is, well, I had a lot on at university. I've just finished my degree and then I've landed a job and I've just moved up to a new city, so I've been very busy for the past half a year or so. But I thought I'd bring you my updated DDD build, seeing as it's becoming more and more popular in the OCG and it's won quite a few tournaments. And I'm going to show you my take on the build, what I think that the OCG is doing wrong, what I think a lot of TCG people are doing wrong, and my own little tech choices that I can just... I'll get straight into the deck profile now and I'll explain them as I go. So first we run 3 Ragnarok. 3 Ragnarok is pretty staple. It's a monster born on legs when you summon it. It's a monster born as a pendulum scale. It has so much versatility that you should always be running 3 Ragnarok. It's standard. I'm currently running 1 Thomas. A lot of people are starting to run 3 because it's easy rank 8 access. I completely disagree with this because it's not, like, it's too situational. I used to run 3 when I first built it and it just bricked all the time. Like, I would open like a Ragnarok, a Thomas, and then a hand that I couldn't use, and then I'd like open a trade-in and I'd have to search Thomas off gate and just pitch it anyway, which makes bad gate searches. So for me, Thomas wasn't really cutting it. Like, if you did get him onto the field, you rarely had a pendulum scale to pop to make the rank 8 play. But he is good for the mid to late game where you want to recycle Keplers to keep getting gate searches when they pop in your gate, or if you want to set pendulum scales with him and Kepler, or him and Newton, so you can pendulum summon your 8s, or him and Copernicus so you can summon your 4s. So yeah, I'm keeping him at 1 for that reason, just because he's a decent pendulum scale, and he's another level 8 for if you can summon him and you can pop the scale, it does make a rank 8. It's just a bit situational, so I'm not too fond of it at the moment. Some people can feel free to disagree, but to me, I'm not really too fond of Thomas, especially seeing as people are like replacing Copernicus with Thomas, and Copernicus is a far better combo piece by miles because it's not situational, and you don't need prior setup to use Copernicus, whereas you do with Thomas. So yeah, I'm running at 1. He might even get cut later on in another build, so we'll see. I'm still running my favourite DD, which is Savant Newton. No one runs this anymore. I know why. It's because it's not a combo piece. Same reason that I'm running less Thomas is the same reason people are running no Newton. It's quite bad on first turn, but then after that it becomes better. So on the first turn, the optimal hands will include either Ragnarok, Swirl, Necroslime, Lamia, or Kepler, or Copernicus, one of those key cards. So basically any monster except for these 3 right here, which are my situational cards. And after turn 1, Newton becomes one of those cards because you'll have dumped them all into the graveyard via either Beatrice, Copernicus, doing a combo on the previous turn. So to me, I think Newton's more live than Thomas a lot of the time, because Newton accesses your entire graveyard where everything ends up, whereas Thomas only really accesses Keplers and Newtons that may have fallen into your extra deck. Occasionally the Ragnarok if they somehow destroy it before you exceed it off. So yeah, I think Newton has more versatility than Thomas, which is why I'm running 1 of them. It's also my favourite because it recycles, and you have the Newton resource loop, which I unfortunately had to cut because it's just a little too slow for the meta. If the meta slows down a bit, I'll re-add it because it does let you keep comboing every single turn, which is excellent. But yeah, another reason I'm running Newton is because if you have Copernicus, it gets you gates immediately, or any DD you might need to complete your combo hand, which is excellent. So say you have Newton, Swirl, Necroslime, and Copernicus, and you want a Lamia in your hand because you know that Swirl, Necro, and Lamia make Crystal Wing Siegfried Field. You just normal summon the Copernicus, ditch your Newton, grabbing back the Lamia that the Copernicus dumped, and then you have your combo. So he does fix certain bad hands if you draw him with the bad hands. He's also a level 7 target, which means that you can synchro him off with Lamia to make your level 8s, which are down here. So yeah, I like his level, I like his effect. He's a high scale, which means you can use him for pendulum summons. He's all around decent in my eyes, and I know why people aren't running him, but I'm going to run him. Next up, the final situational card that's in my deck is DD Baphomet. He detracts from turn 1 plays because of his level modulation locking you into DD monsters only. However, after the first turn, you will have expended Crystal Wing most of the time, and you will have expended probably Meteor Burst Dragon if you've done the biggest combo of the deck, and you might have even summoned Omega by that point. And by that point, most of your extra deck is DD monsters. So beyond the first turn, summoning Baphomet and having the versatility of a level manipulation monster is just excellent, because it allows you to make easy Caesars, which protect your entire board. So if you make a stun field and you summon Caesar, Caesar just secures you game, essentially. It can make you synchro plays into Siegfried if you didn't manage to do it earlier, or if you managed to recycle Siegfried with Newton. It allows you to it basically allows you to level modulate into better synchro monsters that are DD, simply because on the first turn, if you don't open well, he can just snowball your field into a decent one by his level manipulation. So say you don't open with Lamia, and you don't open a way to dump Lamia, and you don't open a way to get her into your hand, but you open Baphomet, you can make a decent field of something like Caesar and potentially Siegfried if you manage to find a way to dump Lamia after Baphomet. Not to mention that if you do make Caesar on your first turn, you can easily access Gate by either tributing it off, fusing it off, popping it with Witch, which isn't really done, but it's still a possibility. If you really need the Gate search and you can make Caesar, Baphomet just makes that all the more easier. And when you go second, now this is a going first build, but say you're in a match and going second, you don't want any traps except for maybe like Vanity's Emptiness. So you probably remove them and side in stuff like Max C's and Orthoruses and Twin Twisters to deal with your opponent's back row so you can overwhelm them. But the aim of a going second build is to win on that turn or beat your opponent down so hard that they can't come back. And Baphomet helps this, because rather than wanting to summon Crystal Wing and Siegfried, you'll be wanting to summon a big field of beaters, including maybe Beowulf, Darks, Caesars, Tells, Kali Yuga perhaps, if they have a monster effect that you need negating. So yeah, Baphomet makes summoning all those monsters a lot easier, especially going second when he's more versatile there than he will be used when going first. So I'm running him at 1. Most people don't. The same reason most people don't run Newton. They're not brilliant on the first turn where everyone wants to make their plays, but on the second turns, these guys really do shine on the second and third turns. So I'm running those just for those sole reasons. You'll notice that I'm no longer running DD Night Howling. The reason being is because even if you open with DD Night Howling in your first hand, you literally can't use him. He is a dead card in your hand. Whereas if you open up with Baphomet or Newton, you can at least use them in something. Like at the end of a Crystal Siegfried combo, if you have a Copernicus lying around, you can normal summon the Baphomet and make a Caesar. You can use Newton as a level 7 to make a level 8 monster. If you have a Swirl Slime in your graveyard, you can easily summon him. Whereas Night Howling doesn't really do much on the first turn, because you don't have a Ragnarok in the graveyard to revive, you don't have a Baphomet in the graveyard to revive. You don't want to be making the 3 King fields on your first turn. You might if you're going second and you want to go for OTK damage, but there are far better fields than that. And if you do just summon him and don't use the effect, there's not really much he can synchro with outside of level 4s, and we only run 4 level 4s. So in my eyes, Night Howling isn't worth it. In a going first build, I might run 1 in a going second build, just because you can search it off of Gate, and it helps bring back fields after everyone's sided against you and destroyed your board. Like Night Howling can really make a comeback, so I'd probably maybe side 1 but definitely not main deck it right now. So yeah, moving on to the next card is DD Savant Copernicus. A lot of people I've seen have said, I'm going to cut Copernicus because it's a bad DD card. And I'm like, why? It's a combo piece. Like, the average combo decks, the mentality behind it is run 3 of every single combo piece, and Copernicus is every single combo piece in your deck. If you're missing a piece, but you have Copernicus, Copernicus becomes that piece just because he can dump it. He's excellent, and he allows rank 4 access at the end of combos, if you have 2 of him or him and a Baphomet. He opens up level 8 synchro plays if you've sided in Orthoruses and you can normal summon the Orthorus. He's excellent, and he really does fix hands where you've not opened that Lamia or you've not opened that Necro Slime that you need. He just replaces it. He's excellent. I don't see why people are cutting him in favor of Thomas, who's extremely situational and doesn't really shine until after the first turn. In my eyes, Copernicus should always run at 3, and Thomas should be cut down to 1 or 0. And that's my opinion on it. That's my view of it. I don't know why people want to cut would ever want to cut this. He becomes anything. So yeah, if you want my opinion, keep Copernicus, cut down Thomas. On to the next card. So DD Swirl Slime. He is the main combo piece of the deck, outside of Lamia, simply because he allows you to fuse and he allows you to summon DD monsters from your hand to trigger Temujin and Alexander's effects. So yeah, he's staple at 3. There's no real reason that I should explain this. Everyone should know what DD Swirl Slime does by now. He fuses, he summons, he's excellent. 3 Necro Slime. Originally I ran 2, if you remember my last deck profile, which was a while ago. I'm running up to 3 now because he's used in a lot of combos, and he's recyclable with things like Cypher and Lord Omega. And oftentimes, if I'm using Pot of Cupidity, I might banish 2. It very rarely happens when I banish 2 of them, but sometimes it does. So what can you do? You just bump it up to 3. He's also a combo piece, and as I said earlier about Copernicus, if you've got a combo piece, you run it at 3. It was my mistake to run it at 2. It should be at 3. So yeah, the only downside with Necro Slime is when you draw 2 of them in your opening hand, which again is quite rare. I think it's like a 1% chance if you work it out. No, it might be a bit more than that. It might be 3% or something like that. It's not very high, but when you do, it kind of sucks. So next card, DD Lamia, the second most important card of the deck. It allows you synchro access. I know Night Howling allows you synchro access, but Lamia doesn't have any restrictions on what you can summon with it, which is allowing us to summon Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, Trishula, Cypher Lord Omega, etc. Any of these synchro monsters can be summoned by Lamia, and all of our synchro monsters are the most powerful cards in the deck, because the way DD works is that the fusions summon monsters that allow you to make the powerful synchros, and then the X-Seeds back up the field. So yeah, she makes our power plays. She's excellent. She's a combo piece. 3 staple. No need to explain any more on that. 3 Kepler. He's Stratos for the deck because you can search Gate, which searches any DD monster. You can also search Fusion and Witch off him. Swamp King and Witch off him. I'm running 1 of each at the moment, simply because you can use Swamp King as a replacement for Necro Slime, and running more combo pieces is excellent, so I'm running 1 of them. Running multiples does brick, so don't run more than 1. I don't really care if it gets banished by Cupidity because it's not massively important, seeing as you can just use Necro Slime and Swirl Slime anyway. 1 Witch just because I'm actually thinking of dropping this from the going first build, but going second, which you sometimes have to do, Witch is an out to Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, which just shuts down our deck. I know it's our boss monster at the moment, but it does shut down our deck if it's used against us. So 1 Witch because of that. But back to the spell cards now. So Allure of Darkness. I'm not a huge fan of this card, but it does fix hands and it does allow you to draw deeper into your deck, and drawing means you draw more combo pieces, and drawing more combo pieces means you can get a better field. So I'm running 2 of them. If a better draw card comes out in the future, I'll probably replace it with that. The reason I'm not running Trade-In and those 6 level 8s of Thomas and Ragnarok is because oftentimes you'll draw Trade-In and you won't draw level 8, and then you'll have to waste your Gate search to get the level 8 into your hand to make the trade-in live, and I don't like that. Whereas Allure can be used on every single card in the deck, which basically means you don't have to make an awkward gate search to make it live. So for that reason, I'm running Allure over trade-in. Next up, 1-for-1, summons Lamia, summons Kepler. Occasionally, when you want it, it summons Necroslime. Excellent card, toolboxes the deck. Brilliant. Cupidity. I remember when this first came out and everyone was like, oh, why would you run this? It banishes half your deck. And I ran it at 3 immediately from the get-go, because it's a +1, and in a combo deck you want as much plus as you can. I don't care if it banishes 10 cards from my deck, I can recycle those with Omega at a later stage, and 10 cards out of your deck isn't really too much. I mean, it's a quarter of your deck, you still have a 3/4 of your deck left to play with, and the chances of banishing 3 of a card you're running 3 of was 0.384%, if I remember correctly from my calculation. So yeah, it's extremely unlikely to banish 3 of the same card, and if you do, you've just had bad luck. The next game that won't happen. Even if you do banish 3 of the card, you can usually make Omega and just recycle it unless you banish 3 Lamias, which, if you do that, GG. If you banish the 3 Lamias, you're going to have to just go for the classic beat stick DD and just ignore your synchros because you don't have any extra tuners. Whereas though, not a huge fan of the card, but it does enable combos when you can summon something like Kepler, and it does give you an extra search, so it's like having 5 gates essentially in your deck. So with that mentality in mind, I'm giving it a shot. I'm not running it at 3 because when I did, it bricked all the time. I'm not running at 1 because when I needed it, it didn't show up, so I'm running it at 2 just so that it shows up when I need it and I don't brick with it. I don't mind if it gets banished with Cupidity just because it's a search card, like it's not the actual combo piece. But for that reason I'm running 2. If as I said, same for Allure, if a better card comes up, these will get replaced. But until then, draw power and search power is what a combo deck needs. Speaking of draw power, Upstart Goblin. I never used to run this card because people would run it at 3 and it give your opponent 3,000 life points, which means they can survive through the turn, which might give them an extra turn to come back from your field, which isn't too brilliant. But now that it's been limited to 1, 1,000 life points isn't going to do much, seeing as our fields usually do upwards of 8,000 damage. I mean, if I'd probably have ran it at 1 before it got limited anyway. It's just there were better cards at the time before all these Crystal Wing Siegfried plays came out. But now it's fine to run 1. It makes it a 39 card deck, which makes consistency slightly better. For that reason I'm running 1. I don't mind if it gets banished with Cupidity yet again, just because it's a draw card, who cares. 3-gate, main contract of the deck. Searches your entire arsenal of monsters, so it essentially replaces itself and becomes any combo piece you might need. So basically it makes your hands excellent. There's no reason you shouldn't be running 3, and I don't think I need to explain why 3 is necessary. 1 Swamp King for the reason I said earlier. It replaces Necroslime and allows additional plays to solidify your boards by summoning extra monsters for you to synchro off with. As you've seen, I did cut Kaiser Ragnarok. There's not when you summon Kaiser Ragnarok, it's either in a desperation moment or you're already winning, and his effect activates in the battle phase and needs you to attack or for it to be attacked, and battle effects just aren't that good. So for that reason I've cut it. If there's more untargetable or problem cards, or cards that I don't want to be in the graveyard, I'll probably start running this again, but until then it's out. It's just not that good. He is good for one aspect, which is beating over Blue Eyes White Dragons, which have 3,000 attack points. But let's be honest, we have Crystal Wing, and Crystal Wing can beat over Blue Eyes, so yeah, there's no real need to run Ragnarok. Sorry, Caesar Ragnarok. I do run Beowulf for the rank 8 though, so that always helps. So yeah, Vanity's Emptiness, the traps. So a lot of people have cut out all of their traps and just left in 2, which is Witch and Vanity's Emptiness, and I don't know why. So Vanity's Emptiness, everyone still runs. If you don't know why, it's because of the Siegfried lock you can make with it. Siegfried can negate it on your turn, which means you get to special summon, your opponent doesn't. It's dirty, it's cheap, but it's brilliant tactics. I love it. So for that reason, Vanities has to be, well, it doesn't have to be run, but it should be run just because of the lock you can make. One which, as I said earlier, it's an out to Crystal Wing. It beefs up your monsters to take the opponent by surprise on their turn, so you can get rid of a problem monster if it attacks into a monster that could kill it if it had 1,000 extra attack points. Other than that, it's a Raigeki for the rest of the turns. If you've like got a bad hand and you've got an extra DD to spare, like it can be used to just get rid of problem cards and back row essentially. And then these are the cards that everyone have dropped: the strikes and the warning, and bottomless, which I've dropped as well, blast, because I don't want to run more than 6 traps. And I don't know why people have dropped this, especially seeing as a lot of people are saying that their build is a going first build and they're not running back row. Like, why would you not run 4 of the most powerful trap cards in the game to back up one of the most powerful fields in the game of Crystal Wing and Siegfried? When when you have that field, what is the opponent going to do? Like, Twin Twist to you? No, Siegfried negates that. That's a -2 to the opponent. They're going to summon a monster? No. Solemn Warning, Solemn Strike. It's gone to the graveyard. Poof, dead. What, are they going to activate a monster effect? No. Crystal Wing negates it. Like, to get through a field of Crystal Wing, Siegfried, and 1 strike, the opponent has to expend at least 3 cards from their hand, if not 4. And usually, if it's a pendulum-based deck like Metal Foes and they're pendulum summoning, like, Strike and Warning just kill the deck. Like, they'll pendulum summon everything thinking, oh, I don't have to worry about back row, no one runs back row, and then their entire field goes. Unless they're a decent player and they understand the concept of not pendulum summoning everything they have. But still, it will negatively impact their field considerably. And a lot of people are arguing, why would I run Solemns if I'm getting contract burn anyway? And that's a stupid argument. Duels last roughly 3 of each player's turns at most, and by that point you've taken 3,000 burn damage from your contracts if you have one on the first turn, and you still have 5,000 life points left to burn with Solemns. Like, if you can lock down the opponent, life points don't matter. And for that reason, I'm running 3 strike, 1 warning to back up the Crystal Wing Siegfried field. It also really helps when you don't open the combo and you can stun your opponent still with back row. Solemn Notice is essentially a Crystal Wing merged with a Stardust Warrior. It's just a bit more vulnerable. And that's, like, imagine having a second Crystal Wing effect that you can use, or a Stardust Warrior on the field that you don't even need to invest in. It's just setting a card. Like, why not run extra negation just to say, screw you to the opponent, you can't play Yu-Gi-Oh! So yeah, rant over. Onto the extra deck. We have Beowulf. He's decent going second because he's piercing damage and he can destroy back row and stuff like that. But that's not the main reason you run him. The main reason you run him is because he's level 8, which means you can easily use him to make Titanic Galaxy, using Fusion from the graveyard with Necro Slime or using Swamp King. It makes it super easy to summon out this badass. So yeah, for that reason I'm running 1 Beowulf. Don't run more, there's no point. Next, Dark. I remember back when I first made my DD videos, and everyone who played DD didn't know how to play, and they would just summon Dark, and they'd set back row and their contracts, and they'd say, yeah, this is a great field, this is the best field we can make. And that really peeved me off that everyone would run 3 Dark and play this sit on Dark game when Temujin was just so much better. So yeah, I don't like Dark, if you can't tell, but she is level 7, she does allow laddering plays to make Siegfried, and that's why I'm running 1 of her. Never ever run more than 1 Dark. I remember an argument people used to make where it was like, why don't you run 2 Dark so you can have a Dark and your field? And you're like, I was just like, no, there's no point. It's just level 7 lets you ladder. That's what fusions are used for, to ladder into your powerful beaters and negators. So like, as you can see, Beowulf gets you into Titanic Galaxy, which is your negator. Dark gets you into Siegfried, which is your negator. Temujin summons back tuners, which summons into synchro monsters, which can summon into your negators. So yeah, all your fusions do is enhance the deck's ability to synchro summon and exceed summon. They're not used for an end game board unless you're going for some kind of OTK. So yeah, I'm running 2 Temujin, or as it's recently been renamed, Genghis. I really dislike the name Genghis because Genghis Khan's first name isn't actually Genghis, it's Temujin. And Temujin was just such a better sounding name in my opinion. Genghis sounds a bit blunt. But anyway, he's the best card in the deck, period. He summons anything from the graveyard so long as you can special summon a DD monster. And that's insane because it lets you combo into so many different plays. Even if they manage to Veiler it or something, which is the worst case scenario because let's be honest, if you summon Temujin, you're going to combo, and if they Veiler Temujin, your combo's ruined. Unless you, which is another reason why I'm running Baphomet, because if you can summon Temujin and they Veiler it, you can normal summon into Baphomet and make a Caesar at least, which kind of keeps your board better because you can get contract searches and like live through another turn. Whereas leaving alone Temujin on the field isn't brilliant. But Temujin, if you do have to leave him on the field, even if he dies, you get a contract back from the graveyard, which is excellent. But yeah, he lets you combo into all the cards of the deck. The reason that you don't run 3 is just because of extra deck space. If you could run like 25 cards in the extra deck, I'd definitely run 3 Genghis. But until that day, 2 Genghis is fine. You can easily recycle him with Cypher Lord Omega's effect once he dies. You can easily recycle him with Newton if you want him again. And you can easily revive him with Ragnarok, so it's not like you've got a lack of Temujin to go around. Yeah, next up, Trishula. This is just a tech choice. Not many people are running Trishula, but it's a 2-card combo, which is insanely easy to pull off. And going second, it either baits out their back row or makes the opponent go extremely minus and lose their setup, which in my eyes is an excellent card. Like, bait or destroy the opponent is 2 criteria that just basically put a card in my deck, and Trishula is one of those, and it's a 2-card combo which makes it really easy to play, and for that reason I'm running 1. Next, Crystal Wing, boss of the deck. He single-handedly destroys a lot of effect-based decks and is one part of the negation field that you're going to be aiming for. The other part is Siegfried, who is a DDD monster, which basically means Temujin can revive him, Ragnarok can revive him, you can use him in fusions if you really need to. In a pinch, I definitely wouldn't go for the banish from the graveyard for Siegfried. I'd try and revive him, but if you're going for game, you can definitely use him as a fusion target. He's an all-round excellent card. He negates a spell or trap card the opponent might play. That can be anything. Just for those people that don't realize, it doesn't just negate face-up continuous cards. You can negate anything the opponent plays just because it's a quick effect. So they play MST, they play Twin Twister. Nope, Siegfried negates. And that's why this field of Crystal Wing and Siegfried is just so powerful. You can negate a spell or trap, you can negate a monster effect, that's a -2 to the opponent immediately, -3 if it was Twin Twister, and if you back it up with Solemns, they go even more negative just to play. And let's be honest, if you've used 6 cards to make a field and they only have 3 cards to play with, chances are they're not going to break your board on that turn. And if they do, you have enough cards to come back from it. So yeah, these 2 are the main cards you want to get out in the field. You usually want them backed up by Solemns, or you want to summon Titanic Galaxy or Caesar alongside them, just for the extra protection and the extra negations from these guys. So yeah, they're being run at 1 each. The reason you don't run more than 1 is because, for 1, it's extremely unlikely that after you've summoned it on turn 1, you're going to get the combo again to summon both of them. Which makes it less worth it to summon both. And the fact that Siegfried is revivable means you don't need to run more than 1. If it gets banished, you can get it back with Omega. So for that reason, you only run 1 of each, plus extra deck space, which is already tight as it is. Cypher and Lord Omega, you open badly, you can summon this guy. He makes you feel better for next turn. Excellent. He recycles anything you banish with Necroslime, with Lamias being banishing themselves. It gets you back anything you banish with Cupidity, which basically gives you an extra toolbox to use because your banish pile then becomes your graveyard essentially every turn. So yeah, Cypher and Lord Omega is excellent. You should run him especially in decks that heavily banish like this one. One Alexander, he's kind of like a pseudo fusion monster in my eyes. You don't use him in any endgame boards, but he bridges into your better synchro monsters, which are over here. Yeah, he's basically just a weaker Temujin that's got one level higher, which allows better synchro plays of Lamia. But Temujin and Alexander combo really well together, which is why you run one Alexander. Don't run more than one. There's no point. You can revive both Temujin and Alexander, and Temujin's just better. So for that reason, I'm running one Alexander. Meteor Burst Dragon. This is a tech choice of mine because it allows you to make Crystal Wing, Siegfried, Titanic Galaxy a lot easier, even if you've already normal summoned. A lot of people don't want to run him, and they've replaced him with cards like Clear Wing to stop like Magispector Kirins and other high-level monsters, but to be honest, it's not really worth it. That's really situational. It's only used against very specific matchups, and Crystal Wing just does it better, so for that reason I won't run Clearwing for now. I'd run Clearwing if the meta suddenly became super duper high level monsters that must be stopped, but until then Clearwing's getting benched for me. Same for Moonlight Rose Dragon. It's a 1 bounce and it targets, which some cards that you want to get rid of they can't be targeted, and that makes Moonlight a bit weak. She also has pretty bad stats, which means she can easily be ran over. So to be honest, I don't really like Moonlight Rose either. It also means you have to make awkward plays to either end on her turn 1 or to tag her on the second turn. And let's be honest, tagging on a Moonlight Rose on your second turn is just it's not worth it. There's no point. I'd much rather run something like Caesar, where I can tag it on the end of my turn 1 play than something that I can't tag on the end of my turn 1 play. Same for Metaphys Horus, where people would summon Formula Synchron and Copernicus and be like, yeah, now I can steal one of the opponent's monsters and negate an effect, but you could go for so much better boards than Copernicus and Formula, no matter what your hand is, unless you've opened absolutely terrible and you've got like 3 gates in your hand and a Necro Slime and a Copernicus. Like, actually, even then, it's you can still make like Crystal Wing and Siegfried out of that. So yeah, there's no point in running anything like Metaphys Horus. Other synchro options that I've tested and have recently removed. Hyper Librarian, it lets you go +4 when you're summoning it with Crystal Wing and Siegfried, but it's extremely situational and only 2 combos use that. So there's better options in my opinion. If I had an extra spot in my extra deck, I'd definitely run 1 Hyper Librarian. Just because of the extra draw power it can give you, which means you can draw more back row, which means you can stun the opponent more, which is always good. Formula Synchron, 1 draw doesn't really matter, and a level 2 tuner monster never really comes in handy unless you want to Trish on the opponent's turn. I never really synchro with Genghis using Formula Synchron because you want to bridge with Genghis into stuff like Alexander or Meteor Burst. You don't really want to go straight into Siegfried because then you can't trigger more special summons, which is stupid. So I'm not running that. I'm not running Prince of Sprite either because that card sucks. You don't want to dump your DD monsters into the graveyard. You'd rather, well, they work from the graveyard, but you'd rather have them in your hand to combo with and then use them from the graveyard, which is why Formula is better than Prince of Sprite. And for the same reason, Formula's out, Princess Sprite's out. You don't really care about 1 draw when you have so much search power. Onto the Xseed monsters. I'm running 1 Kali Yuga. This is a recent re-addition to my deck. It was removed because a lot of the times I'd summon it and it just gets striked. But now, when people have the mentality of, I'm not going to play back row because it makes my deck faster, which is true, but it also means that I can summon Kali Yuga and just nuke Pendulum Scales, nuke any spell cards you might need. It also lets me negate your pesky monster effects that prevent them from being destroyed, or have, so say they have like a Crystal Wing on their field. If you summon Kali Yuga somehow miraculously through Crystal Wing, you can negate Crystal Wing's effect. But the main reason that I'm running Kali Yuga is not its Heavy Storm effect, which is excellent by the way because it's Heavy Storm, but it's for the reason that I can reset contracts from my graveyard. So if the opponent's playing an extremely back row hate deck, where they'll just destroy my gates again and again and again, and I've gone through all my gates, this allows me to reset a gate. And that's perfect, because it lets you rebuild your field, essentially. And all it takes is one Ragnarok and a level 8 monster in your graveyard, which could be Beowulf, for example, which is very easy to set up. There was more plays when Night Howling was a thing, that let you summon Kali Yuga, but Night Howling really isn't worth it. So it's kind of like a situational rank 8. I would, if you want, you could probably cut it for something better, like maybe Void Ogre Dragon, which I've also cut, by the way, sadly. Just not enough space for it, and more making another level 8 on the end of the play required Orthoros, which I've cut from the main deck, because I'd probably side 3 of them instead, so that when I'm going second I can use them to back row hate the hell out of my opponent. But yeah, that just made Void Ogre less optimal, so I've removed it for now. It might come back later when we get more support, or when card choices change around or the meta shifts, who knows. But until then, yeah, Void Ogre's gone as well. But yeah, on to the next card. Titanic Galaxy is our go-to Exceed rank 8, because it negates spell cards, and spell cards are essentially most decks' core right now. Sorry about that, didn't know what happened there, my mic just cut out. Yeah, so you want to make it to negate spell cards, and it prevents your opponent from attacking over any lingering monsters that you've left on the field, like Pernicus. If it's left in attack mode, like Titanic Galaxy can redirect the attack, which is brilliant. But normally you don't leave much loose ends, it's usually just used for the extra layer of negation on top of Crystal Wing and Siegfried. So yeah, he's all around excellent. Beatrice is back in the deck. She's for those mediocre hands where you can't make Crystal Wing and Siegfried, but you can make something like Beatrice and Omega, which means next turn you have the setup to combo into a much better field and potentially OTK or stun the opponent. Because Beatrice can dump you 2 cards, one on your turn, one on the opponent's turn, and Omega can recycle any of the banished Necro Slimes or Lamias you used to make that field. So essentially your graveyard becomes set for the next turn. So for that reason I'm running one of it. I'm not running any of the like Dantes for the destruction effect, simply just because it's not really worth it. Like the number of times I summon Beatrice, I could count on like one hand. She's one of those cards where if you have a bad hand, she's brilliant, and when you have a good hand, you're not going to use it. So for that reason I'm running her. Next, Tell. Comes as standard when you're running Caesar, but to be honest, Tell is far better than Caesar after you've expended all of your Exceed materials and you're just reviving it. Because if you didn't know, Tell has the ability to Foolish Burial any DD or contract card from your deck to the graveyard when it's sent to the graveyard, and it's not once per turn. A lot of people think it's once per turn. It is not once per turn. I could use Tell's effect 5 times in one turn and set my graveyard up for an OTK field just by tributing over it to summon a Ragnarok and reviving it, and then tributing it off again to use Ragnarok's effect, and then using a Temujin to revive the Tell back, and then using other cards that can revive to keep bringing back Tell and keep dumping and keep bringing it back, and it's just excellent. Imagine having like an Armageddon Knight that says dump 5 cards from your deck when this card is summoned. Essentially, it's excellent, but it's not so much used in those fast games where like duel's over in 2 turns, but it is used in those grindier games where the duel might last 4 or 5 turns because people have sided against you and you've sided against them, and the decks go a bit slower. Tell just sets you up a bit easier. But there wouldn't be any Tell if there wasn't Caesar. And Caesar is excellent for those bad hands where you open with a Baphomet, because it allows you to search for contracts by fusing it off or tributing it off, and it adds an extra layer of protection to your field by its detach effect, which is essentially soul charge for your entire field for the turn. So you can summon Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon with Siegfried using Swirl Slime, Copernicus, and Lamia, and then you have a lingering Copernicus left over, and if you have another level 4, just normal summon and add a Caesar to that. That makes your Crystal Wing Siegfried field permanent and there to stay, which makes you that much harder to kill and basically locks you into the win. And for that reason I like running one Caesar. A lot of people have dropped it in favour of extra synchro options, but as I said earlier, these extra synchro options are extremely like matchup dependent. Like you'll use each of these against a different deck, whereas you can use Caesar against every deck, and versatility is what I look for in a card. I don't want a card where it's used against one specific card or one specific matchup. I want a card where I can use it anytime, any place, and it's always good, and that's what Caesar is. So for that reason I'm running one Caesar. So I'm going to go over some of the cards that have left the build that I haven't gone over yet, and some of the cards that I've considered in the past and I'm not running anymore. So let's go straight into that. So as I've said earlier, Orthros, I'd side in 3 because of back row hate. On the turn 1, they don't have back row, you don't need back row hate, and the Fiend type restriction is stupid, and its effect to summon itself off effect damage rarely comes into play on turn 1, so for that reason Orthros is out. Night Howling, I've already explained, doesn't really contribute to turn 1 plays at all, and it's only good for reviving fields, which is better in grindier games, which is why I probably side one or run it in a going second build. Max C, lots of people are running this in their going first builds, quote unquote going first. I don't think that they're really going first builds simply because they're not running any back row and it makes the field a bit weaker. But yeah, they're running it in a going first build, and that's essentially saying, give me dead draws for the first turn, because if you open 1 Max C, it means you only have 4 cards to use in your hand for that turn. If you open 2 Max Cs, you've just significantly hindered yourself. So for that reason, I wouldn't run it in the main deck if you're going first. I'd side in 3, because chances are you'll be going second, because they won't want you to make your Crystal Wing Siegfried field. And then Max C lets you either draw a ton, which means you can just combo through their field, or it stops them making a field that you can't break. So for that reason, I'd side Max C, I'd run it in a going second build, definitely not run it in a going first build just because of brick hands and it being unusable in the first turn essentially. I've already talked about Kaiser Ragnarok and the Synchro lineup. Rafflesia. I used to run Rafflesia because of, as I said, the Crystal Wing Siegfried and then a rank 4 on top of it play. I used to run Bottomless Trap Hole and Time Space Trap Hole with it so that I could use it a lot. But it really killed me when I'd either draw a Bottomless or I'd draw a Time Space, and I had the Rafflesia play, but then Rafflesia would just be useless because I'd have drawn the Trap Holes. On top of that, the follow-up turn when you're going for an OTK, Rafflesia has no attack points essentially, so it doesn't really help you OTK through the opponent, where like something like Caesar would. For that reason I've dropped Rafflesia. She is still worth considering if you fancy running some bottomless trap holes instead of the Witch, which I would do if there wasn't such thing as a Crystal Wing. So yeah, she's out until something happens to Crystal Wing, I guess. If something happens to Crystal Wing, I'd be incredibly sad because that basically just kills a lot of the potential of this deck. I mean, we still have Siegfried, but we don't have any monster negation after that. So yeah, if Crystal had some Crystal Wing, I'd be sad, but Rafflesia would be able to join the deck again. I've already mentioned Princess Sprite. She's a worse version of Formula, and Formula didn't make the cut, so why would I run Princess Sprite? Twin Twisters, not going to run them in the main deck because obviously going first build they have no back row. Would run it in the side deck at maybe 2, along with the 3 Orthros, just so I can ensure that they don't have back row to stop my plays. But nah, I'm not going to run it in a going first build. It's another dead draw, which can prevent your combos. And then I've already mentioned that Human Resources has sadly left the deck just because it's not fast enough. The meta slows down, it's going back in, but until then, it's going to sit firmly outside the deck and just wait its turn. I really do love this card, and I hope it does come to the point where I can add it back into the deck, but the way that Konami makes cards, I'm assuming it's not going to happen, because the meta is just always going to be fast now. They're not going to slow it down as far as I can see. But yeah, that's my DD deck profile, the in-depth thoughts on a lot of my card choices, a lot of cards I could be running that I'm not, a lot of cards that I am running that other people aren't. And I hope you enjoyed the ride as I discussed each card in depth. I'm going to try and hopefully get some duels up next weekend. I can't promise anything because I do have a job in the week and a girlfriend in the evening and weekends, so anything can happen. But I'm going to try and get out some more content in the upcoming weeks. But if I'll let you know if life gets in the way, essentially. But I'll try and stick around. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you liked the DD deck profile. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Give me suggestions. Tell me how you build your deck. If there's any tech choices that you have, like I like my Newton. What do you like? I'd be interested to hear any like cool combos you've done against decks that isn't just the standard Crystal Wing Siegfried plays, or any extra deck choices that you've made that other people haven't that might be interesting. Just leave them down below. And give me a like and a subscribe if you want to see more. I'll be around. I'll definitely be posting more often now that I've settled in my new city. So yeah, thanks for watching. Peace.